webpage and YouTube channel as well. We're really excited for today's session. It's me, Chris, and I'm so thankful to have Liz here join us today. Many of you already know Liz. If you don't, Liz not only helps with client support and leading our project implementations, but is also the brainchild of many of our best new ideas, working with Steve and Mike, particularly on the team, as they are the force of invention. So today's webinar is going to be about how to use your programmatic data, emphasizing the use of programs as you're trying to develop new opportunities with your departments. We just recently, if you've seen this on our website, put out our 3-point recommendation. And last week, actually over the last 6 weeks, we've been rolling out our point 1 related to fiscal health forecasting and scenario planning. We now have 6 cohorts, I believe, who have gone through over 70 participants with the idea of constantly monitoring your financial projections as they're ever evolving and testing out your realm of solutions relative to the various scenarios that you're starting to envision. Just last week, we emphasized in our webinar the program partnership opportunity area, where we believe at some point out in the near future, it will be wise to understand where we have options to leverage our partners and come up with regional solutions. And that was the focus of last week's webinar. Today is far more focused in point 2, which is how to use your programmatic business intelligence to begin to develop opportunity areas. Our agenda, I'm going to start with this compelling why for why programmatic insight is what we believe is going to be key to some of the decisions that lay ahead for our organizations in the very near future. Liz will join us to start to get into the how, so that you can perform this approach with your own data. And between the two of us, Liz is going to lead us through a learn and do interactive session with some hands-on exercises to really prove the point of how this can be done. And hopefully you'll leave with some training that you can bring back to your organization. Our overall objective as we think about applying programmatic insight is to be able to use all of the data that you've developed thus far and work with your departments to maximize all of the opportunities you have to take action. Finding the programs that you need that actually need more resources and getting that from your department so that they're communicating clearly that even in a cutback environment, there are some programs that actually need to grow. Programs that absolutely probably can't be changed will need to be provided status quo, and then on down the line for all of the other options and opportunity areas at the programmatic level for programs that could be put on pause, suspended, even temporarily, programs that are flexible for service level adjustments in the downward direction, internal program partnerships and consolidation opportunities where departments can collaborate and maybe centralize the way that certain programs are provided, programs ideal for external partnership ideas, and certainly all of our revenue generating options that we can possibly come up with. We're going to try to apply the PBB blueprint for action, just like we've done in the past when our future horizon was more like 3 to 5 years out, as we talked about which programs need more resources in the future. We're shifting that obviously to something more along the lines of the next 3 to 5 months, how to start to study your programmatic data so that you're ready to take action on your programs whenever you need to. This follows our logic that we had worked on with GFOA. If you followed the webinar series, where just a few weeks ago, we talked about de-emphasizing trying to pinpoint exactly what's going to happen, and instead emphasizing that there are broad scenarios that seem to be taking shape, whether it's a more short-term recovery like a V for your revenue streams, or something along the lines of a W or an L, where maybe we have back-to-back hits of shelter in place, and the ramifications on our revenue streams would require us to produce different types of solutions, or an L if there is something more of a deeper recession or depression that takes place. We followed the general scenario planning session with strategies and solutions for each of the various scenarios that we can imagine. And the point of doing that was to start to recognize that short-term quick fix solutions for a V recovery, where the economy bounces back, maybe we have a vaccine or some sort of, we get our arms around the virus. Short-term actions can help us survive and get back quickly. They can buy us time. We outlined a whole host of things that are more line item based, everything from diminishing variances, freezing vacancies, mining reserves, deferring capital projects. All of the quick fix solutions that we have been focused on, they're appropriate for the V or the deeper V, just to buy us time into the future. The problem is, or what we're recognizing, is that we're only living in this first part of the V. That's what that dash looks like, and then it's dot, dot, dot. We're not quite sure what happens next, and this is the time to plan, to do your work with departments, because whether or not we have a bounce back that we really hope for, whether it looks something more like 2 Vs in a row, if there is a resurgence of infections in the fall or winter, or an L, our overall point is that no matter what happens next, we have hopefully applied our best near-term solutions to buy us time to start to focus on the programmatic decisions that we might need to make should any of the W or L scenarios emerge. So we're really focused on programs. Here's why the importance of program data is so crucial to us. For any of those scenarios that play out, if all we have is line item data and we're looking at any scenario with a revenue hit, with line item business intelligence, we are only allowed to focus decisions on specific line items. We could talk about how we cut back on certain salaries, how we cut back on materials and training and travel. All of our solutions are grounded in this language of basic line items. If we can move to programs and services, we can still talk about line items, but we can have much more strategic conversations about service levels based on what we are providing overall. Let me show you what this looks like. Here is City of St. Albert, who's on the call. If we move from personnel revenue and non-personnel line items to how those line items have been associated with departments, and furthermore, within departments, how we can see our programs here with curbside garbage collection, we all know that we still have line item data associated with what it costs us to provide that particular program. And if we can start with the program level, curbside garbage collection as an example, then we can have specific conversations around what are the opportunities we see for curbside garbage collection. For example, as we know, fuel costs are fluctuating and definitely lower than we've ever seen them. And so as we think about curbside garbage collection, maybe that impacts our non-personnel costs that are in the neighborhood of 1 million. Perhaps we can shrink what it's going to cost us to actually fuel curbside garbage collection, even if we didn't do anything differently. We could talk about regional partnerships. What if we provided this program with some of our other neighbors, even if temporarily, our other neighbors who might not be able to prioritize this particular program? And then even as we go further down that line, maybe it becomes a revenue generating opportunity where some of our neighbors who can't provide the program would pay us as a regional provider to serve a greater area. Point being, if we can focus on programmatic discussions, we can get to our opportunity areas much more quickly. So St. Albert has gone through the long-term view of creating programmatic insight, moving from their line item budget to this type of summary. This is where we want to be able to get all of you. While this is for the long term, we also want your opportunities to be focused on what can be done in the next 3 to 5 months. so that we could even, as I'm showing here in the screen progression, if I drilled into what are those programs where there were revenue increase or insourcing opportunities, I can get into a department level. I was particularly interested in finance. What programs had they already identified that were lending themselves for an insourcing or revenue increase opportunity? And we see here some of the opportunities that have been noted include, with added capacity, we could do accounting services for nonprofits. We already fund joint RFP options for our auditor with other municipalities. How can we further this realm? And this is where we hope to get everybody. So St. Albert only needs a shifting of perspective from the long term maybe to the short term, but they already have a ton of great ideas on the table, 224 of them as a matter of fact. City of Salem, Oregon, 127 program-specific opportunities. This is what we want to be able to get to. They're downloadable in a report format, and this is what Liz will get into as well. City of Denver, well on their way in their programmatic exploration, but we actually have an upcoming exercise with the City of Denver, again, to refocus on what the opportunities are that are coming up. So that's the overall introduction. I am going to pause my screen as we open it up and turn it over to Liz. But my final slide was simply going to be for all of us who have used the blueprint thus far for looking 3 to 5 years down the road. The simple twist that we'll get into today is changing the time horizon, perhaps 3 to 5 months down the road, and then opening up a group of COVID-specific program insights that you can tag your programs with as you're leading your departments through this exploration. So I'll pause here, Liz, as I turn over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. I feel like I've gotten to talk with a lot of you over the past few weeks, whether it's through the fiscal health cohort or through just getting to work with you. I want to start with, this is a link to this presentation. It has editing functionality. So if you type anything into a slide, we're all gonna see it. And we're gonna know who it's attributed to, so careful. I will ask you to participate at one point. And these are slides that I'm hoping that you will take back to your organizations and utilize. I also hope that what we come out of today is a list of insights that are more universal and that you can maybe gather insights from other organizations that will help to shed light on circumstances that maybe, or ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of or maybe wouldn't have come to your mind first. So that's what I'm here to do. We're gonna talk through a little bit of what Chris did, and then we're gonna get to work. So I will invite you to turn your cameras on. When we get there, there's a slide that will announce that. You do not have to. I'm not gonna peer pressure you into turning on your videos, but you can participate by coming off mute and having your video on. You can participate by typing into the presentation, and you can participate in the chat box for Zoom. So that's kind of all of the things that we're gonna cover today. So just like Chris said, we have had a traditional set of insights that are the default in your account right now, unless you've had us switch them over. If you want to continue with the traditional and just utilize them for the short term, you really can. You'll see that it's not dramatic different shift from traditional to the COVID-19 insights. We've added a couple more partnership ideas, but you also have the ability to customize each of these. So you can change your insights into anything that is meaningful to your organization. We just would recommend staying around the 6 to 8 insight, just so that we're not diluting your results and you're not having to filter too much. But if we can roll those up into some 6 to 8. But we're gonna take the COVID-19 insights and run with them today. So you have all those options, but we're gonna really focused on the COVID-19 ones. What we're also going to talk about today is how you could approach this in your organization. So I think the reality today is that you're likely not going to be able to get your entire organization or even an entire department in a room together. Maybe that's coming soon, but for now, we want to help guide you through a virtual approach. So we're going to go through 3 different approaches to getting this done today, and then you will get to pick your poison. We will also talk about applying each of those COVID lenses or each of those insights one program at a time. So really taking the time to look at each program. You will find an opportunity for one of the lenses, and I think as Chris will demonstrate, you can find an opportunity in each of the lenses if you really try. And then to get really specific about it. So just assigning a comment to a program, sure, that gives you another level of information, but if you don't start to think about how you would accomplish it, you're just kind of creating a future step that you'll have to go through at some point. This is not meant to be all 100% perfect opportunities. Start with as many opportunities as you can, and then you can start to sluice down to the appropriate one for you, but why not gather them all and retain them all so that you can use them now, but also apply them in the future. So now we'll talk about those specific lenses that we're going to look through. So as Chris likes to say, every program has a future. We typically apply that in the 3 to 5 year outlook, but now we're going to look 3 to 5 months. Where will you need more resources? What are the opportunities for revenue generation? Where can expenses be eliminated? And what programs can you potentially pause, even just temporarily? You can also think about the long term. So some questions that we will come back to, and I think that as we get into the practice, this is a slide that you all can have on your desktop to refer back to. But if you need more resources, can you repurpose those from existing places? Can you identify efficiencies so that you can do more with the resources that you have? For revenue options, we don't, as we think about the populations that we're serving, we certainly don't want to increase fees on people that are already having a hard time making ends meet, but that is something to consider. Are there grants, disaster recovery programs that you can apply to? Are there philanthropic opportunities to explore? Are there partnerships or entrepreneurial ideas that you can explore? As far as partnerships go, looking both internally and externally, but we'll focus externally here. Are you well positioned to provide a service to others in the community? If you were part of Eric Keck's presentation on Friday, then he went through in great detail some of these types of partnerships. And I have a link to our YouTube channel at the end of this presentation. So if you missed it, you can go back and watch it. And then on the other side, so that's bringing the services in to possibly generate revenue, but also thinking about, could you possibly look to the community to take advantage of contracting out and reducing expenses that way? Are there, looking for the internal partnership, are there overlapping programs that could be combined? Could you centralize some services? Could you repurpose positions that are potentially a part of some of those programs that are going to be paused, that maybe could share their expertise and experience with other programs? And then what programs do we need to consider stopping? Is it forever? Is there something that we've been doing and it's just coming to light now that we no longer need to do this? Or is it just that we can't do this in the current environment and it will come back? If you are pressing pause, where do those resources go? So you can see this is more cyclical than it is one by one consideration, but how can you apply these questions and really begin to think through each program in your inventory? So this, Chris said this to me in the meeting as we were preparing, and I liked it. So you can always find opportunity if you are looking for it. Apply each lens one program at a time to identify specific opportunities. You will find them. So communication is the key as we start to gather the data. I think one of the things that has come out of this particular crisis is that we've all had to explore different ways of connecting and different ways of working together. And one of the ways that I have found that I think has improved upon the way that I was working previously is utilizing shared documents so that we can gather input from multiple people. And we're going to talk about that as we go through some of these experiments. So the virtual reality, how are we going to facilitate conversation in the current climate? So first one, we can use this presentation. I have some slides in just a moment where we can gather ideas. It will allow multiple people to participate in the process, but it also creates a bank of ideas that you don't necessarily have to input into the tools. You certainly can, but you would be able to store it in this document and reference back to it at any moment. Then we also have the same idea, but working from the program inventory template that is available to you in online PBB, and just manipulating it slightly so that you can capture comments in a spreadsheet, again, uploading it to the Google shared or just sharing it on a shared screen, but working through that where you can, again, collect a bank of insights. And then finally, inputting those comments and insights into online PBB so that they are visible to everybody in the organization and that you can download in those program report tools that Chris referenced earlier, and we'll talk about more in just a minute. So Chris and I went through and tried to identify some programs that we think many, if not all of you, would have in your program inventory. And we did this as an experiment to see, could we identify opportunities? So I'm not going to make Chris come off mute for this one, but he's going to in just a moment. But just as we think about snow removal, I pulled these programs from existing client databases. So some of the definitions are more specific to regions, but just trying to think, what could you take away from this presentation and apply immediately? And I thought getting a shared bank of insights from, we have international presence here, from all over might really be an interesting exercise and potentially helpful. So Chris identified for a regional partnership, can we have a central snow removal crew? Could we work with the cities and counties around us to provide central snow removal? Looking internally, same idea, but do we have multiple departments who are working towards the same goal? Are we doing snow removal in one department for streets and another department for parks and trails or fairgrounds? Could we centralize that effort? The option to suspend, there's a lot of overtime contracted snow removal that is utilized to make that program run. Can we hit a pause on that piece of it? Service level decrease. Could we have a lower threshold for response and frequency? So as Chris pointed out, Denver crews are out when snow levels reach 1 inch. Could we change that threshold to lower the frequency that those crews are out? Service level increase. Can we keep access to emergency facilities, prioritizing routes to hospitals? Maybe that we have to put a little bit more emphasis on those specific routes and areas. And then status quo. This one is hard, but we really want to focus that status quo is meaningful right now, because just being able to continue to offer a program as you have offered it before is impactful in the times that we're in right now. So, status quo, we have to offer snow removal if we live in a place that snow impacts the way daily life happens, and we have to do that to ensure public safety. So Chris and I went through this exercise together yesterday. So those are our 6 insights utilizing the Google Slides. So I went back and entered this into online PBB, and I'll show you how I did that in just a moment. But I think this is an excellent way to gather. Of course, we could have multiple insights for each one of these comments, and they could be attributed to different people. You could utilize cross-departmental input. But that's just one way to collect the data, and then you would just choose the one that you wanted to tag in online PBB, but you can store all of it there. You just have to tag one to move forward with. So here's the other approach that I was exploring for how we could get this done, and that's to utilize the Google Spreadsheet or any sort of shared spreadsheet service. So I just went into our program inventory. For anybody who is not a PBB client, our dashboard has access to all of the tools that we utilize. So I'm going to reference this dashboard. And if you are unfamiliar or want to learn more, please feel free to contact me and I can walk you through it. But for those, I think many of you have programs in our tools. So I will continue as though you are familiar. So I would click on my program inventory and then download the program inventory template. Then just upload it to my Google Drive, and I added columns for each one of the comments. So I'm going to show you here. And Chris and I went through the same exercise as we did for the Google Slide approach in this Google spreadsheet for the Economic Development Program. Thinking with that, we're going one program at a time, and we are utilizing each lens and really challenging ourselves to find an opportunity for each one of those lenses. So as this is defined as economic development, it's the coordination of economic development activities within the community, such as property tax abatements and other economic development programs supported by the city. Provide reports on current recipients of incentives, and work with the prospective developers on potential projects. So as we went one program at a time, one lens at a time, we were able to identify opportunities in almost all of these different areas: service level increase, service level decrease. You will also, if you click on the link that I just clicked on, you have access to this document as well. You should also be able to edit it. So we will come back to that again, but just so you know, you can click on that link to have access to this document. We skipped over status quo here because while we can look through every lens, it's not required. If you have an opportunity that you are really excited about and you think is the right move, you can just list one. We just are trying to illustrate that if you look for an opportunity, you'll be able to find one. So we have those insights listed in service level increase, decrease, option to suspend, internal partnership, and regional partnership. So again, you'll be able to access the feedback that Chris and I provided, and then we're also going to come back to this in just a moment and work through it together. So back to the presentation. So just by clicking here, you'll have access to the template. So that was option 2 for how to work together. Again, letting every voice be heard to create a bank of insights. I'm going to reference another webinar that we hosted last week with Nick Kittle. He used to be with the city of Colorado Springs, and they, during the Great Recession, gathered all staff together to come up with ideas for how they could make things more efficient and continue to operate and not have to reduce staff by as much as they were anticipating they would need to. And they had, 800 ideas come in. They moved forward with 10, but those were combinations of ideas that came. So it's allowing all of those ideas to be captured so that you have that information to go back to and to utilize in combination with others to build the most effective and efficient way forward. Moving on to number 3. So this is going to be the place where I think most of you are going to be really interested, because this is how do we get it into the tools and how do we utilize it there. So again, coming back to our dashboard, there are multiple ways to access this, but this is the way we're going to do it today. So going to program costing, you'll get your list of cost types. So you'll see your personnel, non-personnel, and revenue. And we're going to click here to toggle over to total program cost. Once you toggle over to total program cost, you'll see your list of programs. They are, unless you're in St. Albert, they're probably all blue. Or if you've gone through the commenting exercise previously, you'll highlight or hover over the program that you're interested in looking at, and then click on the gear. So we're going to actually do this, and Chris, is going to go through the process with us. So once you've clicked on the gear, you'll see your program comment box, and I'm going to actually jump out of here and come over here. And now I'll do step by step. So we're going to click on program costing. I have already toggled over to my total program cost. And now I'm going to go through building construction inspections. And the description for this program is construction oversight and quality control, constructability reviews, which I don't know if that's a real word, but I'm going to use it, and inspect public works infrastructure, construction management support, and GIS data acquisition. So when I said that we needed to tag programs with one comment, but we could store all of the other information, I came in and just saved main insight, because that's going to be the one that we're going to go with after we tag something here. But I want to capture all ideas. So I just entered other ideas, and I just manually entered this. You could any way that you wanted. But I'm going to take Chris through the exercise. So Chris, you're on the
ready.
spot. Status quo. Do you want to start there, or do you want to start at the bottom?
Let's do, I mean, for status quo in building inspections, it would be just an as-is recommendation if we want to maintain this level of service because we still have ongoing construction projects and they're important for our community. The status quo recommendation is keep that program going as is.
Awesome. Okay, let's go to service level increase.
So service level increase, it could be the fact that if we have a seasonal reprieve from shelter in place and businesses are thinking about they really need to get their activity taken care of fast, our anticipation might be we might see a surge in demand for this type of program. So we are either going to need new resources to meet this surge in demand that could happen, or potentially get into a partnership option, which we can get to in some of the other insights.
Sorry, you
but
guys.
predicting an increase is not far-fetched.
Great. I feel like, you know, when somebody's looking over your shoulder and you can't type, I've got 35 of you looking over my shoulder, so I'm going to have a hard time typing. Okay. Service level decrease.
Yeah, the potential for a service level decrease could be if this program, if we did less, we would be depending on others to fill in the gap. So it could be a partnership solution that we might be looking at. But if our organization was considering a service level decrease, that would require somebody else to fill in the gap. The only other thought I had here was rather than necessarily decreasing service levels, but certainly decreasing costs by way of efficiency, I think it's very plausible with fuel costs being as they are, that our fleet of vehicles that the inspectors use, it could be cheaper than what we budgeted to perform this program in the first place. So that could be a real opportunity area, not to mention simply sharing vehicles, which we'll get into in internal partnerships.
Awesome. Okay, let's look at internal partnership.
My thing on internal partnerships would be we've heard that there are some relevant skills that construction inspectors have or building inspectors have that other types of inspectors have as well, or places where you might have somebody doing a different type of inspection who's also doing a building inspection. So the internal partnership idea is looking for, are there other people with the job skills of being an inspector who could now absorb more work, and that could create an internal efficiency.
And then also the shared vehicles.
And the shared vehicles, you're right.
And then regional.
So regional partnership is probably going to rise to the top as my favorite one. There's an entire company built out there. They're called Safe Built, and they have demonstrated that this type of solution works. Why wouldn't it work from a public sector approach? So the idea is, hey, we all have building inspectors. Quite possibly we could see a surge in demand. Can we have conceivably, even for a short period of time, one regional building inspector group that is the most efficient way to go about it. Sure, we'd have to learn some of each other's codes if they're different from one organization to the next, but that's a detail to be worked out. The basic idea makes sense. Short of doing just one big pooled building inspector crew, the idea might be if one large organization is more well-positioned to absorb that work, then we can all pay into them. For example, this is what we're talking about. This is a possibility with the city and county of Denver. They're a large entity compared to a lot of the smaller organizations nearby. They might simply be more well-positioned compared to other entities to hold on to that service and provide it, whereas some of the other entities might prioritize it as less, they can't afford to do it, and pay an increment to a large regional provider.
Great. And then do you have an option to suspend?
Wouldn't recommend it, would be my, I mean, if I was participating in the exercise. I mean, you could, sure, we might be able to come up with one on the fly. We will require the construction companies to provide their own reports, self-inspect, and we could take more of an auditing approach but I mean, the public safety risk might be too large to consider that, but it's an idea.
Okay. So because I already have a regional one selected, you're going to tag this as internal partnership just so that I can show.
That's great.
I'm just going to take what Chris typed in, or what I typed in for Chris down there, and I'm going to just copy it under this main insight. And I'm going to do this without causing issues. So we have now tagged, we have one main insight, but a bank of other ideas. And you can, I mean, you can see that we have multiple ideas for some of these different comments. You could have 10 different insights for one comment, and then just pick the one that you think is best, or the few that you think are best, and put them in there. You can also just enter one comment. I just want to create a bank of insights, because I think it's important to be able to look back at that historically, and also to look to the future to think, what can we not do now? But this is sure is a good idea for us to think through as we continue forward as an organization. So I've saved that. Now you'll see when I close out of here, that building construction and inspections is now highlighted as purple. So that's just going to help as you come back to quickly identify those programs that have been, one, tagged with a comment, and two, which comment it was tagged with. That doesn't mean that there aren't other ideas in there, but that's the one that whoever is responsible for that particular program and that particular insight, that's what they wanted to tag it with. So coming back to our presentation, we'll jump back in here because now I said it was going to happen. So we're going to talk through this first, and then you all can start pondering whether or not you're going to turn your screens on. So in the data collection during the process, I would recommend utilizing shared documents. I think it's just really exciting to think about getting multiple perspectives. So thinking about both short and long term, multiple users can add input without concern over overwriting data. So in online PBB, if you're working in your own user group and you're adding comments, you are not going to overwrite somebody outside of your user group. But in the case where we're trying to get multiple perspectives, you just want to make sure that you're not in one program at the same time as somebody else. So potentially gathering that information in a shared document is the wiser way to go. Then you don't lose any information. Just a reminder, in online PBB, we can only tag one program with one comment. So we just have a hierarchy of comments. So it's just the one that maybe you want to present on, the one that you want to talk about first, but you can still store all that other information. And it will all pull in the program reports that we can download. And we're going to go to that in just a minute. But it's practice time. So come off mute, turn on videos. We're in this together. Again, we tried to pick programs that we thought were commonly found in many of your organizations so that we can actually gather insights and work towards supporting you. And we'll look at each program one at a time and then utilizing all three approaches. Just a quick reminder, when you do finish, you will have the opportunity to download the report. All of the information that is entered is here. It is also tagged with a colored header. So we have the increased service level that we decided for economic development with all of the ideas that weren't associated with that particular comment, excuse me. So we have that insight and all other insights stored there. Another interesting feature that if we have time, I'll go back and show you, but you can restack your programs by program comment type so that you could come in and say, I want to see all the programs that fell under increased service level, and I want it to be organized by comment. So we can do that as well. Okay, payroll processing. So we focused on externally facing programs up until now. I'm going to leave presentation mode. So all of you have edit permissions for this. So I am happy for you to call out ideas. Tell me which comment you are interested in sharing an insight about. If you are not comfortable coming off mute, or if we get too much noise, then feel free, click into any one of these on any one of these three, or four, I have four. But start thinking through these programs. I want everybody to go through and start thinking about which insight you're interested in sharing. So I am going to be on payroll processing, and I'm going to ask for anybody who wants to share a regional partnership insight for payroll processing.
Hi, Liz.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I like your ceilings. It's an aside, but
Thanks. I've been relegated to the porch.
With regional partnerships, you might be able to identify a lead municipality that takes on the payroll processing for a number of others in the region. So, for example, we might look to Edmonton in Alberta, take on payroll processing for some of the smaller cities like Leduc, St. Albert, Sherwood Park, etc.
Wonderful. Excellent idea. I'm going to change that to something we can see better. I love that. We could also have multiple insights under regional partnership, but I'm jumping over to service level increase. Does anybody have an insight for service level increase for payroll processing? Do we need a service level increase?
Liz, this is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, I do think there is a need for a service level increase just because of the FACRA rules that have been imposed on us from the federal government. And implementing that has been a challenge for us.
Awesome. Excellent point. Oops. See, you guys are going to see how terrible my typing is. Okay, let's jump over to an internal partnership. Is there any internal partnership that could exist payroll processing? For internal partnership, let's also consider efficiencies. Is there a way for departments to better communicate during the payroll processing? Okay, not a lot of excitement around internal partnerships for payroll. Okay, I want to make sure that we get through several examples. So I'm going to jump Now we have jail services. So Chris was sharing an interesting observation from the city of Denver in that they have really tried to, I'm going to say, lean out their jail population and have increased home monitoring. And, you know, it is a result of the circumstances we are living in, but is this something that could remain in place? Is this successful? So I'm going to say service level decrease is it actually an increase in home monitoring? What about any sort of service level increase for jail services? Do we need that? Do we need to tag jail services as a service level increase?
We've heard that generally as the population declines, the complexity of the population remaining in terms of mental health needs or just, you know, just severity of crimes increases. And so sometimes that is actually a challenge to manage a needier population.
Sure, that's a great point. Awesome. Anything else for jail services? Anything that you would want to tag jail services with?
In talking with Josh Showman yesterday from Washington County, Wisconsin, all counties are looking at ways that they could partner. And so the same hub idea, what Josh is thinking through is the reason that they've decreased jail populations is to decrease the closeness of people and decrease the spread of COVID. However, if we move into a time when that concern, if we can prove that that concern is lessening, and there's not as much exposure opportunity, given the decreased population, can there now be regional partnerships to take advantage of some of the excess capacity? So same idea for a regional partnership, dependent on public health goals and safety goals, of course.
We've been doing that too, Chris. We're selling our bed space to the state where we've got excess capacity and actually turning it into a revenue generating tool for us.
Was that Mark?
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry, that's great, Mark.
I'm going to add that, Mark. Wonderful. I want to move on to the next program, just because I think sometimes it's hard to consider these programs that are maybe so important to your citizens and just practically can't be provided right now. So, you know, I think as you're thinking through some of your parks programs that are near and dear to everyone's heart, you know, it may not even be worth discussing. You may just have to suspend them. But are there other things that you would want to tag a summer day camp with that, you know, potentially supposed to be starting in the next 5 to 6 weeks?
My mind goes to partnerships, Liz. Private sector, other public sector entities. That's just where the instinct for this. If we're not able to provide it completely, then is there a way that we could partner with the region and come up with a way to do it?
Thank you, Chris. Another perspective that may be interesting, and the summer day camp is likely run by, you know, a team of part-time employees is my guess. You know, if you are suspending this operation, can you repurpose those people who might have otherwise been counting on that job? Is there another place within the organization, both full-time and part-time employees? Can you share, can you repurpose your people? And I don't mean for that to sound insulting, but.
Redeployment, yeah.
Thank you, Daria. I'm gonna just put, okay, so we have 7 minutes left. You will all have these slides. What I want to just continue through is to show you, in this test database that you also have access to, we could go through the same exercise utilizing the various cells in your Excel spreadsheet. This does not upload directly back to our tools, but again, you could copy and paste this information into your comment box. So you have access to this. I just made up this template. You could organize it in any way that was suitable to you. And then I'm gonna come back over here. And then just a reminder, you can always directly work in your online PBB tools. My reason for trying to find alternatives to working directly in the tools is what I stated previously, just to have people working together to engage more people. And I think in small groups, or even in this large group, people are maybe willing to collaborate and think outside of the box more if they're challenged by their colleagues. So getting a group together to work on a Google PowerPoint or a Google spreadsheet. I also think, I don't know if Jen from Duluth is online, but she had people just in an exercise working cross-departmentally to try to generate ideas. It may not be the idea you go with. I know some of my colleagues went through a liberating structure called 15% solutions, where you are purposely teamed up cross-departmentally so that you may not be the one who has the knowledge of how a program is run, but you may be able to think of an idea for how you could run it better or run it differently, or an idea for how to enhance it or do it more efficiently. So just some other ideas for how you could apply this particular exercise. So how do you put it to work? One, you could take the tools from today. I think you all probably have a basic understanding of how to do this. And you could run your own comment and insight workshop. You can work with us. You can contact either Chris or your Resource X contact, and we can help you customize a presentation like this that you could then run. But we could maybe talk about those custom insights, or which format is most appealing and how we could help you get that organized. And then we also, just like we did in St. Albert, where Chris was on site to facilitate a workshop, we could do that remotely via Zoom right now and actually do a Resource X facilitated insight workshop. So those are kind of the 3 paths forward. I am going to open it up to questions. I know I didn't leave very much time for that, but just a reminder, you can connect with us via Slack, and then all of the recordings for all of our webinars are on our YouTube channel. So you can find it there. Also, Eric Fabian generally supports each one of our webinars with awesome blog posts, and we'll include the videos there. So thank you so much for participating today. I hope this was helpful. I hope you can think about how you can take this back to your organization and put it to work. Questions?
Hi, Liz. One of the questions that we have up in St. Albert, and Daria and I have been talking about this quite a bit as of late, is how to, once you do your list, and in our case, we have 250 some opportunities, and they're really great. Has your team given much thought, or do you have a process or some thoughts just on how you go from 250 opportunities to, let's say, 20 or 30 actionable ones you're going to do over a specific time frame that are going to result in X number of savings? There's a multitude of different ways to get there, but given that the organization is so large and that our leadership team, directors, and their staff, as is, are already having to focus on their core services in this time, have you given much thought into kind of a streamlined process that's maybe removed from bias to help whittle this down and come to executive with actual cost savings?
And Paul, yes, I have. And I will answer, and then I'll let Chris jump in. But I think the approach that we think would be most practical and maybe most beneficial is to create another set of peer review teams. And it could be one peer review team for all of your comments, or you could maybe sort it into comment type peer review teams. So who is sitting on the service level increase team versus the decrease team? And then if the goals for those teams are to find cost savings or revenue generating ideas, that may just be the point that you are evaluating each of those insights against. Chris, any other ideas?
The one that came to mind, Eric Keck last week in the program mapping exercise, and this would fit in well with what you're describing, Liz. Eric Keck had the same thing, Paul, where in program mapping, you come up with a list, again, of program partnership ideas, no different than how you would do here in this insight exercise. And the question is, how do you move that forward, and which ones are you going to take advantage of? And he had recommended a sluice, a way to, as a first attempt, plot them out on a graph that shows complexity, possibly on one axis, like, hey, this is going to be really hard to pull off versus not that hard. And then the other axis was opportunity or value. So clearly, if you had that kind of 2x2 matrix, if something was really hard and it's not going to result in a lot of value, you have to define, like, what do you mean by a lot of value? Is it $10,000? Is it $50,000? Is it more? But then that was a quick way to filter out maybe a handful of ideas that could be good, but you're going to focus on the slightly less difficult and higher value first, then higher value and hard, then lower value and easy, something along those lines. That was kind of a good way to initially sluice it.
And Paul,
that would make sense. Almost like looking at the effort and impact that it would actually make, making sure that we're focusing our efforts on the ones that will actually give us the most of the result that we're looking for.
And I had created a template for you guys with all of your comments that had that particular sluice in it, and I may have sent it to Dawn. Maybe I didn't send it to all of you. So I'll pull that up and send it to you right now.
Yeah, that would be great. We're kind of moving around a little bit, so
sure,
we're all jumping
absolutely.
into different roles.
But yes, and actually, if I can find it very quickly, I'll pull it up, because it was just exactly what Chris was saying. All of your comments, and then columns to identify, is this high complexity, yes or no? Is this high value, yes or no? Sorry, let's see if this is it.
Paul, one other thought while Liz is getting that file. In the past, pre-COVID, introducing a fictitious resource constraint could work and might not work. I think we've all seen organizations who do hey, if you had to cut your budget by 10%, what would you do? And sometimes departments don't play, they don't jump in enthusiastically to that exercise because it's not realistic to them. In this environment, it might be very realistic, and the opportunity to give some control to the departments to say, we've facilitated you through this first list. You have these opportunity areas. We can help you think through more. We could crowdsource it and bring in other departments to think it through. But bottom line, we all will be facing a real resource constraint. What would you recommend if you were in control? Start with your revenue generating ideas. We have X amount of time to try to work through these together. and that amount of time is a variable. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months before you have to make these decisions. But it might be interesting to also empower the departments to say, this resource constraint is real. This is not an exercise. What would be your top recommendations?
I think those comments are excellent, Chris. We've identified using like the little v and big V scenarios. Our chief financial officer, I think we've identified a shortfall currently is 4.6 million. That's of, you know, if facilities open by June, it's going to get bigger. So by using those GFOA scenarios, that's how we're trying to forecast what that fiscal constraint might be. And I think that Daria and I have talked about this on end. Without that constraint, you know, it's a whole bunch of stuff, and I think you need that constraint to be able to plot it out and talk about what's actually going to bring you savings now versus like, you know, 5 years from now.
That's great. I mean, it's real.
And this is the document that I sent that I'm going to re-forward to you guys, but it's it has all of your program information so that you have the cost and the quartile, and then it's the comment that was assigned to it, any notes that were entered with, or the insights entered with those comments. And then I added, you know, you can go ahead through and do the sluicing and make more comments, but then flag those things that you want to take to the next level, so that you're then you can filter on that and not lose any of this or any of this that you take the time to go through and do, but really just then flag for action those things that you want to move forward.
Is this a template you created, or is it something that is generated by the PBB tool?
It is a template I created, and just shoot me an email and I'll get to work on one for you.
Okay.
Awesome.
I like it, Liz. I can almost see like even flagged for action, you know, within the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, you know, like even the
Yes.
creative opportunities for that.
I almost see like red, yellow, green,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So if you have to make immediate actions, which one of these you can make a call on, which ones require more work, which one requires, you know, identifying partner organizations. You know, some of them will just take a little bit more time. And
Exactly.
I like it.
Perfect.
On the note of flagged for action, and putting together some similar, you know, challenges with Denver and using their data, in that first step, we're going to ask them what they have the authority to act on. And my thought here is this leads to one of two conclusions. Either their superiors are surprised that people are marking things that they have the authority to act on aren't marked as having the authority to act on, or there is a large amount of things that they can instantly take on their own. And then that might help you, again, sluice toward what do we then need to help sponsor if we have a good idea. It's not going to just happen on its own, right? And so figuring out that next step. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can tag your data to know how you can leverage it.
Man, I love the timing. The introduction of that, the concept, Daria, that some are more immediately actionable, some might be a little bit more on the horizon. The City of Fort Collins city manager was thinking about something similarly but different. He was trying to sequence of their most actionable ideas, and if you had a plus or minus on the value of them, like, hey, if we came up with a regional solution on building inspections, it's going to take us 3 months to figure it out, but here's the cost savings we think that can happen. He wanted an order in his mind as he's walking through the V. If we start to learn, okay, it was a V and we were bouncing back and now it's looking like little V, then I would deploy regional fleet. And so I've got the solution, I've worked it out, I've talked to my regional partners, we're ready to do it. And that was in his mind what he was thinking, can I have all of the actions I would take if the revenue shortfall starts to accelerate? And then absent any ideas, if we don't have regional fleet on the table or a program efficiency XYZ, then the open communication to the rest of the organization is, absent another idea, we're going to resort to, we have to do something. We'll have to do a layoff, or we'll have to do whatever the line item driven decision is that everybody's trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of intriguing. It's not meant to be a threat. It's just, absent a better idea to insert, then this is what we're going to have to do.
Oh, totally. I think it definitely makes sense to have multiple lens on each of the opportunities. So one is, yeah, we can do it now, or we're ready, we can do it if needed. And then there are those that you go back to, effort versus value that you get. So yes, if there are some that, no, we can't act on it right now because we need to do more work. But if we manage to do it, the benefit is, high. So we should start working on it now, knowing that we're not going to see benefits until like 3-6 months, or maybe like even a year in some cases. But yeah, I think it has to be multiple lenses. It can't be just one. And then you add council to that as well, and what their priorities are. So we have, our strategic plan for that. So.
Amen. That Kelly Rudek was mentioning that as well. Ultimately, how does that lens play in? What would be the impact on your results?
So I'm just curious, maybe you have not come across this, but most municipalities, at least in Canada, have been impacted very similarly. So, like a lot of those cultural, recreational programming has been, canceled. It's not happening. But we're also starting to see some interest in introducing new methods of providing programs right now. So instead of, kind of looking at, should we be providing it in the first place right now, to, hey, why don't we start offering this online? Which, in some cases can result in additional costs, right? So I'm just curious if you came across examples like that, and what your thoughts are on that, considering, we're talking about scenarios and you have to watch it and be ready to make a decision versus, hey, here's the opportunity, let's go online.
I think it's great. And Liz's, one of the earlier slides, we had put together these COVID-specific program insights to really get to the heart of how you're going to manage with the resources that you have. But Daria, you raise a good point. There are other tags, other program insights that are worthy of making note of as well, such as, hey, we're thinking about reinventing the way we even provide this program. We're looking for a redesign. And certainly we want to talk about the resource ramifications or consequences of the redesign. Does it cost more resources? So it could fit into increased need, increased service level, because it's going to cost us more to deploy the technology to provide this program overall, but maybe then there's a revenue impact. I think your idea is really solid. It would, the question would only be, does it fit into, could you still describe it and get this idea on the table with the tags that we've listed, or introduce others like reinvent the program, redesign how the program is delivered? It's a really a great point. Mm-hmm. In fact, Steve, I think in Denver, that is another one of the opportunity areas that we're considering too. Cool. Well, thank you all for sticking around for, after hours for this webinar. It's been really good. And I think it'll be, we're definitely interested to hear how you're thinking about moving forward with this exact version or a variation on this. And just like Liz had demonstrated, if there's any way that we can help support you, make sure you have what you need. I know at St. Albert, we're going to be talking here in 15 minutes or so. So looking forward to that conversation. But please, we were excited to provide this webinar. Liz, great job to demonstrate how this actually works and give you some options to think about. And we hope that you and your organization will recognize you have hopefully some period of time to think programmatically and explore some of these various programmatic solutions so that you can deploy them if needed.
We had to do
So
a birthday party for Terry Vic Phillips the other day.
yeah, birthday
Sunday.
party.
I had this green
Someone's party.
and I tuck it in up there and I hang it up.
Well, thank you, everybody. I will get this.
So I take those beach chairs over there
and
and
share.
I sit them here.
There you go. I'll get this uploaded to YouTube and out to everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.